Why did the British government strongly colonize in the 1600s? If the colonies of neighboring countries increase, their economic power will improve, which means that their military power will improve. This was a very dangerous situation for the British government. Because the British government was urgent, it did not compromise with the Native Americans in North America, and sent troops to kill the Native Americans and start colonization. This map shows colonial territories acquired by Britain until 1750. Directly above is the French colonial territory. France's colonial territory grew enormously through the early to mid-1600s. At this time, beaver fur was fashionable in Europe, and France was making a lot of money from furs obtained from North America. Beavers were also present in Europe, but their numbers were drastically reduced. Beaver populations were enormous in the Great Lakes region of North America. Britain also hunted beavers, leading to war between France and England in the North American colonies. This war is the French Indian War. At the time, besides this war, Britain and France were fighting a war called the 7 Years' War. All over Europe, Preußen, Austria, Russia, France, England, Sweden, Spain, etc. were at war. Both wars were occurring at about the same time. The 7 Years' War was from 1765 to 1763 and the French and Indian War was from 1754 to 1763. British wins both wars. At this time, France itself was in crisis. The Palace of Versailles was being expanded, the citizens were starving, and the nobles were indulging in great extravagance. After France lost the war, Britain and Spain occupied the North American continent that had been occupied by France, Britain, and Spain. So, did Britain benefit enormously from winning the war? It wasn't. If you win a war, you're just screwed, but if you lose, you're screwed even more. Because when war breaks out, the workers who were working are taken to the battlefield. This will bring the economy to a near standstill as the country's productivity drops. In this way, the British government's finances were ruined, and the British government decided to reform the tax system. The word reform was a proclamation that in the future, the finances that were ruined by the war would be supplemented by collecting huge taxes from the people. But there was a problem. The British government's announcement to collect more taxes included not only the British mainland, but also the colonies. You might think that's the problem, but it's not that simple. The British who moved to the colonies were mostly poor people. They crossed over to the North American continent without the help of the British government and worked hard to clear the land and erect buildings. In any case, the British government made tax reform by creating the Stamp Act and the Townshend Act. The Stamp Tax Act imposes a tax on paper, such as passports, newspapers, books and permits. This law imposed a tax on an object that people often use, namely paper. 2 years later, the Townshend Act was enacted. This law was even more massive, taxing all necessities. Immigrants who immigrated to North America, who were not even protected by the British government, were very opposed to imposing a huge tax. As a result, people in the North American colonies began to protest enormously on the Boston Harbor side. As protests intensified, the British government withdrew its policy of imposing taxes. However, it was announced that only black tea would be taxed. At this time, a huge stock of black tea was piling up in the warehouses of the British Empire. In order to get rid of this black tea stock, they announced that they would impose a small tax on black tea instead of selling it at a very low price. Since then, the price of black tea has become very cheap compared to the existing price. The simplification of the complicated black tea distribution structure also contributed to lowering the black tea price. But North American colonists do not eat English black tea. Because black tea smuggled from the Netherlands was cheaper. Then the Boston Tea Party happened. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe. Thank you for watching this video.